a good initiative program where we be having like a coffee session, like a very relaxing session. Our friends, uh, our international friends, and also our for this session is a special edition with the lecturers. So I think we take this opportunity to get to know more about our lecturers. It's like a different session in the class. When in class we as a student and lecturers, but today, it's still the same students and lecturers. But I think it's very precious to have this time to know more about our lecturers. Uh, so first of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is 𝒓𝒊𝒆𝒓𝒅𝒔 I'm fourth year, first semester students, Bachelor of Accounting. Um, and I'm from Malaysia, Keluang, Johor. Okay. So before before we start, I think it's very important for us to know our invited guest. So his name is Rodrigo Fontaine, or Associate Professor Dr. Ridwan Fontaine, was born in London in a non-Muslim family. He converted to Islam at the age of 23. He has been teaching in IIUM for quite a long time, since 2010. I believe he have a lot of experience and many things to share with us tonight. And also what's very important, he currently living happily with his family, and surprisingly, his wife is from Malaysia. So I think we go straight away to the question, like
Okay.
very relaxed question. I think most of all of us want to know you more. I think
Okay.
you can maybe introduce yourself, about how you migrated from your old country to Malaysia, and then if you don't mind, maybe you can share about the journey of you converted to Islam. I think it's very interesting story.
That's already like a 1 hour session
Oh,
just there. Okay. So Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum wabarakatuh. So before we started, I asked the organizer whether they wanted like serious answers or more kind of laid back, relaxed answers. So I think it's supposed to be more relaxed, laid back. But I think that there's also some serious elements to it. So very kind of a snapshot version of my life. I was born in London. My father is French. My mother is British. And my father, at that time when I was about 5, 6 years old, he got a job in a small company in the Netherlands. So I actually grew up in the Netherlands between the age of 5 to 18. And I was in a French school. And so at the age of 18, I had to decide whether I go to the French university system or the British university system. So I decided to go for the British university system. And then when I was in the UK at the University of Bath, in my final year, I met Malaysian students. So I don't know how they did it, but well, actually, I do know. One of them was basically, I think he kind of had pity for me, so he was giving dawah to me. And so at the age of 22, I came to Malaysia for the first time as a tourist, and I stayed 1 month. Actually, I was living in Kota Baru in Kelantan because my friend was from Kelantan. I was non-Muslim at that time, but I was staying with his family. And when I came back to the UK, I needed to prove to myself that there was nothing in Islam, that it was just a cultural thing, that I didn't have to take it seriously, because obviously being exposed to a practicing Muslim family for a month, I saw and witnessed a lot of things. So I kind of started reading the Quran, translation of Quran in English. After a year, I decided to convert to Islam. And of course, having converted to Islam, I didn't want to live in the UK anymore because it's a very cold country and there are many reasons why I wanted to leave the UK. So I had some connections in Malaysia. So I kind of worked those connections a little bit. At the age of 29, at the age of 27, I found a very beautiful girl who happens to be from Benut.
Benar.
Now, as a Johorian, you
Oh,
know where Benut is,
yeah. Benar
but
is at Pontian.
right, most people
Yeah,
outside of Johor don't know where it is. So it is dekat Pontian.
yeah.
So anyway, age of 27, I met her father. She said, okay, no problem, but there's one condition. I have to live in Malaysia. He didn't want his daughter to be living in the UK. So I said, okay, no problem. I also want to live in Malaysia. So 1999, I managed to get a job in MMU in Malacca. So I worked in MMU for a few years. I had my first son, then I had a second son, I had a third son, I did my PhD. So many things happened. Then I worked for 2 years in MSU in Shah Alam. And then 2010, I arrived in Gombak and I discovered IIUM. And I've been living here in IIUM happily ever after. That's kind of a very short synopsis of the whole journey.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Ridwan, for the answer. I think it's very inspiring story. I think we need to hear more about
Okay.
the I think the courage and the hardship you as a international people to decide to live in Malaysia. But before we go into that kind of question, I think we have
Okay.
some kind of like quick answer question.
Okay.
So first, if you had to briefly explain your country to a foreigner in 3 sentences, okay, what would you say? Just a
Which
brief.
one? I have two.
Huh?
France and UK.
uh, I think
Okay,
maybe we can.
let me do both.
Okay, all right. Doctor.
Okay, so uh, the 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 UK is actually a very nice country, but it's like all countries in Europe. It's a country where people are quite old,
Mm.
so it's no longer a happening place. So if you want to retire, that's a good place to retire. That's basically a short summary. France is maybe a little bit younger than the UK, but France is divided in two. You have the north of France, which is more industrial, and then you have the south of France, which is much more lively. So my heart is in the south of France. I actually don't like the north of France, but I mean, it's very similar in culture, like the UK. It's like we're all Europeans, really. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you for the answer, Doctor. So next, I think a quick question. What are 3 qualities of the Malaysian people that you admire? And I think maybe you can relate how do you decide to choose to have marry with a Malaysian
Okay.
people.
Okay. So
Three
obviously,
attribute.
there's a lot of things. When I was at university, I got to know a lot of Chinese, and so I went to Hong Kong. I also went to Taiwan, and it was very weird because when I was in Taiwan, like I remember I wanted to take the bus by myself. They didn't even have the Roman letters or Roman
Oh,
numbers. Like I also had that experience in Korea. I wanted to go to the bathroom. They
yeah.
didn't have the sign of a man or a woman. It's like it's all written in Korean. So I had to wait to see someone going to the bathroom to know which gender am I supposed to go to.
I see.
So
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say is that there are some very basic things that makes it very easy to live in Malaysia. First of all, the alphabet, kind of Western alphabet. Most Malaysians speak English. Okay, not always very good, but okay lah, boleh faham. And then I think generally most Malaysians are quite welcoming. I realize that it depends which country. So sometimes if you're from some countries, they're very welcoming. From other countries, they're less welcoming. Okay, so there
Oh.
are some differences. But I think the other thing is actually up to you as a foreigner. like when I came to Malaysia, I wanted to learn how to speak Malay, and speaking Malay well became like my first priority.
Mm, I
You know,
see.
I didn't want to be one of these people after 10 years in Malaysia. If you say, can you speak Malay? Sikit sikit. Ala, that's very embarrassing. It's no, I want to speak Malay like a Malay.
All
Of
right.
course, I do not speak Malay like a Malay, but uh, like I can have conversation with the police or with
Mm,
clerks or, you know, at the immigration office, and I can talk in Malay, and that actually saves me a lot of problems.
yeah. Yeah, thank you. I think like Malaysian people, we are very, I think, very excited lah to see, and white people to can talk in can talk in Malay, like we
Okay,
have
but
like
there's one thing that is really important to understand, which took me a long time to also understand.
okay.
When we learn Malay, actually we're only learning KL Malay.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
A few months ago, I went to Kedah, I went to Alostar. I
Yeah. We have,
didn't understand a word.
yeah.
I was so confident with my Malay, and then, what are they speaking?
Yeah.
So, Kedah, Kelantan, even in Penang,
Terengganu.
sometimes oh, yeah, okay, this is Northern Malay. Okay, so like takes a few days to adjust a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing you have to remember. There are some differences from state to state.
Yeah, they have different dialect. Okay, but I think for like Johorian and Selangor, I think it's not quite different, right? For
It's very very
yeah,
very similar. Yeah.
very similar.
But then this is the thing, you feel overconfident, and then when you go to a northern state,
Yeah,
then you feel like quite stupid actually.
okay, that's it. So I think next we go to like more to know about the culture uh in Malaysia and also about your country. So the first question, I for the organizer, I like jump to the ninth question. How different is Malaysian food from your country's traditional cuisine?
So okay, first of all, there's no such thing as Malaysian food. Okay,
Yeah.
there's Malay food, there's Chinese food, there's Indian food, and then, so many different variation.
Mm-mm,
But my wife is Malay,
mm-mm,
so she generally has a what I would call fusion food, which is a combination of Malay cooking plus Western cooking, kind of
mm,
mixed together.
mm,
Um, so obviously there are some differences with the cooking back home. So of course, in Europe we would not have a lot of rice. Here it's like rice every day. Okay, I'm already used to that. Um, Here, I think honestly, the one of the things that sorry to say this, kind of a criticism of the way Malay food is being served at the moment is there's not enough vegetables and there's not enough salad. So it's
mm.
like all kind of rice, lau, and
Yes.
then I mean it's
A lot
okay,
of
but
protein.
it's yeah, it's a lot of carbs, a lot of protein, but it's not a lot of vegetables, not a lot of fruits, and even though there's so many delicious fruits in Malaysia, but
Mhm.
it's like somehow. But I understand, like a lot of people
Yeah.
eat outside, and then in the mama stall they kind of make it very simple, and but
Mm-mm.
it's something that I wish sometimes that Malaysians were maybe a little bit more health conscious.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-mm.
but that's just my personal opinion.
Maybe
It's
what I can share about food in Malaysia. Basically, if we are at a kampung, we usually prefer like ulam,
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
a raw vegetable.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
but yeah, from time to time, people like to eat delicious food, commercial foods. Okay, and then yeah, maybe r- uh I can say somehow it's rare lah. People.
Okay, let me share my experience coming to Malaysia as a young man. When I came, I was 29. I would love to
Okay.
go to Pasar Malam. and
Oh,
like fried food all over the place. Oh,
yeah.
so delicious. But as I grew older, I actually became more health conscious. And now when I go to Pasar Malam, I say, "Oh my God, this is so much fried food. It's so unhealthy.
Yeah.
It's so, So I think some is also maybe have to do with age, and as you become older, you maybe say, actually, this is not good for my health. So your perspective changes a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's very also important note for us. Yeah, to even our Malay food is like very delicious, like more like you said, more carb and protein. But I think it's also very important for us to eat healthy.
Mm.
So the next question: what is your favorite Malaysian food?
So I actually miss uh, good Chinese food.
Oh,
Yes, I know there are some Muslim Chinese restaurants, but somehow I don't think it's pure Chinese food. Like I used to eat Chinese food when I was non-Muslim, and good Chinese food is actually very, very tasty. But sometimes I think it's just because I'm used to eating Malay food all the time, so it's like, human being, we want variety. Uh, but if I okay, now that I think about the question a bit more, the most delicious place that I ever been for food is in Mumbai, near
Mumbai.
Malacca, ikan
Oh,
bakar. That's the
ah,
best. That's the best.
yeah. I think everyone of us need to take note and try. Umbai ikan bakar at Melaka.
Yes, yes. It's about 10 kilometers from Malacca, but it's very, very famous for ikan bakar.
Ikan bakar. Betul. Okay. Thank you for the answer. So for the next question, I think in Malaysia, our difference from other I don't know like difference. I think like France, they also have a lot of ethnic. We have like in Malaysia, we have Malay, we have Indian, we have
Mm.
Chinese. So there's a lot of celebration. Like yesterday, we have a Deepavali. So the question is, are the festival here celebrated the same way as they are back at your home?
No. I mean, for a lot of practical reasons, like
Mm,
as a Muslim country, of course, the main festivals are the two Eids, right? Hari Raya Korban and Hari Raya Fitri. It's not celebrated like that in France or the UK. Um, Even Chinese New Year is not really celebrated much in Europe, but obviously it's a big deal here in Malaysia.
mm,
I think the thing in Malaysia is that there's more respect given to all the festivals.
mm.
And then it's up to you whether you want to join or just like you just take it as a public holiday and just stay with your family at home and whatever. Um, so it's kind of there's a lot of variety. So it's up to you how curious you are, and then
Mhm.
what you decide to do, who you go to visit, and so on and so forth.
Okay. So the next, I think this question more about sharing from yourself your experience about having to live in Malaysia. So the first question, um, did you face any sort of discrimination or rude behavior from the Malays, or maybe the people at Malaysia?
Okay, so this is something that I would say I was very fortunate. Uh, Basically, before I came to Malaysia, when I was in the UK, I met a number of Malaysian students, and one of them is a guy called Khairul, and he was actually a friend, and he was a lecturer at that time at MMU. And so I went to visit him on holiday, and he said, "Hey, why don't you apply to MMU? They're looking for lecturers." So I said, "Okay." So I actually got the job with MMU, and he kind of became my Ansar. right? So I was a
Answer.
muhajirun, he was one of the
The
ansar.
answer.
And that really helped for the first few weeks, because the first few weeks you experience complete culture shock. And it's like, you start doubting, like, why did I come to this country? Why did I leave my home? Why? But then, because you have somebody very close to take care of you, it's like, okay, after a few days, you kind of start to get your bearings and things like that. And then the problem is just very practical problems, like you don't have a driving license, even medical prescription. You have to, get a new prescription with a new kinds of drugs and this and that and whatever. And the very weird thing that happened to me is the first time I went to a shopping mall. This was, I remember, IIUM Mall in Malacca, 𝒓𝒄𝒕𝒖𝒓𝒅𝒔. There were hundreds of kids in pajama, which I had never expected that. But because they were all speaking in Malay and I didn't understand any Malay at the time, it's just like this background noise, which was so disorienting. So at the beginning, everything is disorienting, and then it's only after time you start to become used to the language, you start to buy your first car, and then you become mobile, and then so there's a lot of small practical things that you need to sort out. But generally, nobody was really rude or difficult. Sometimes when you're dealing with government officers, that requires a certain skill.
Yes.
And that's something that you acquire, after a while. So normally when I deal with government officers, I start by speaking in English. And then they might say, "Oh, do you speak any Malay?" And then I switch to Malay, and they're very happy. No. So that I kind of developed a certain style. But normally I will not start too quickly in Malay. I want them to kind of, I don't know. I find that if I start too quickly in Malay, I come across as being too, how to say, too eager. Right, so it's like more kind of, you have to be more relaxed and start in English, and then if their English is good, then you can continue in English, and if their English is not so good, you switch to Malay, and then so on and so forth.
Maybe just to tell them that we are from other country, but we're trying our best to speak in Malay, right?
And I mean, basically, I've been living here since 1999, and as I always say to people, I want to die here. So, even though I don't have a Malaysian citizenship, but I have a permanent residence, for me, Malaysia is my home. When I go back home, it's actually I'm visiting as a tourist, not, this is where I live.
Yes. Okay, so I think for the next question, the question is about, did you experience a culture shock when you first came to Malaysia? But somehow I think you have answered the question. But maybe you have some tips, or maybe important notes for our international students, maybe a first year students, what they need to prepare to mingle with people in Malaysia and to live in Malaysia.
So I think the point is, everybody has got a culture shock. And so if you know that that's what's going to happen, when it happens, you're not surprised, and you don't have any doubts. And I think the other thing is just to get to know people. So, for example, if you experience culture shock and you decide to stay in your room and not to go out because you don't want to take the risks of embarrassing yourself or this or that, then you're going to end up in a situation where you will actually be quite depressed very soon. But if you go out, you meet people, maybe people from your own country or other international students, or like I think in a place like IIUM, there are some clubs and societies that will help you
Yeah.
adjust and so on and so forth. So, but it will take some time, and then after a few weeks. But I think the other thing that is very important is in every country, every culture, if you look for bad things, you will find bad things.
I
If
see.
you look for good things, you will find good things. Like you come to France, I can show you lots of bad things. You come to the UK, I can show you a lot of bad things. But if I want to show you the good things, of course, there's a lot of good things to show. So in every
Yeah.
country, you have good and bad. So it's like, where do you decide to focus on? And
Yes.
then you will meet some good people, you will meet some bad people. Okay, so again, where is your focus?
Yes.
That's your personality basically that comes out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's very important uh advice. I think it's not only applicable for us to go to another country, but if we go into a new society, for example, we as a student go to the internship, or maybe we go to industry and work with people there. I think there's goods and bads, but it depends on how our mindset and what we want to see
Mm.
at the place, or how we want to be adapt to the place.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for that very important advice from you. And then the next question I want to ask: when you were getting adjusted to the Malaysian culture, is there's any incident that took place which you cannot forget? Maybe
Yeah, good,
good.
good or bad?
Ex- Maybe we can start with good first. Good experience.
My wedding.
Yeah. How was your wedding, Doctor? Is it
So
like a grand or
no, no,
maybe?
no, 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 no. So my in-laws basically come from a kind of low-income family. My father-in-law was a small farmer, um, but alhamdulillah, all his children kind of got a good education. So there's a lot of like doctors and PhD students in the family. But I think that the style of the family has always been, quite modest, and that was not a problem for me. So the wedding was like just a kind of a kampung wedding. Um,
But for
yeah,
sure
it's
have
very,
kompang,
very,
right?
very simple. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, the funny thing about getting married, and this is a warning to all of you who get married, is I had a very nice blue baju Melayu,
Oh.
and I was so afraid of spilling food on my baju Melayu that
Yeah.
actually I did not enjoy the food at my own wedding. So,
Yes.
and I remember I also was wearing a samping, and at that time I didn't know how to wear a samping properly. Okay, samping is like some kind of I don't know how to describe it for non-Malaysians, but anyway. And so my friend told me, "Oh, you just wear a belt so that that
Yes.
allows you to hide to cover the belt, and so it doesn't fall and this and that." So there's all these small things that was quite interesting to remember. But
Yeah.
so that's on the good side. On the bad side, I mean, this is not really a bad experience, but it's more kind of an experience. Um, when you start working, you're obviously going to have to pay income tax, and income tax is very tedious. So you need to have all your documentation for the
Oh.
year and this and that. And at the beginning, I didn't know how to organize the documentation. So I had to go to the tax office, come back, then 3 months later, and then they say, "Oh, we have to do the tax evaluation for 3 years ago." It's like, I don't have. So it was kind of a mess. So it took a few years to kind of sort out all these tax issues and this, that, whatever. So I think it's important if you are international student, all your documentation is in order, especially things like getting passports and whatever.
Yes.
Make sure that it's done early. Follow up with the right people, etc., etc., or else things get messy.
Yeah. when you talk about documentation, the first come to my mind is my father. He's
Mm,
actually keeping all the document, even uh, all our sibling, our birth certification, our SPM result, our everything. They will have a copy of them, and then he will keep everything.
mm.
Yeah, yeah. I think yeah, to be a father, to be the leader of the family is very important lah. I think that's our role as a man in the family.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So next, I think we move towards a question about your experience becoming the lecturers in IIUM.
Hmm.
So the first question is, what are some drawbacks you face here as a lecturer in Malaysia, if there is any?
Um, okay, so I think normally the people will normally think about is money, and I think that's always the wrong place to start. I think the salary that you get in Malaysia is okay, but if you start to compare, like, oh, how much is this in my country, then
Yeah.
you go bananas. The basic thing is that the cost of living in Malaysia is quite cheap. Um, I made a few choices. So one of the choices that I made is I want to live in Bangi.
Mhm.
So I commute from Bangi to Gombak. For me, it's not a big deal. You just adjust yourself. That's going to be my traveling time. But or else, after that, it's just about how you manage yourself, how you manage your expectations. So sometimes you can say that, okay, in Malaysia, the process of getting promoted is quite slow. So if you are the kind of person, or you want to have your career to go up very very quickly, then don't go to a public university. I think don't go to a private university either.
Yeah.
So it becomes more about what is your expectations, whether your expectations are realistic. Like I'll give you, honestly, frankly, I would say this is the my observation about UIA students.
Mm-mm.
I know a lot of UIA students who want to start their own business. Okay, now the best thing to do if you want to start your own business is work for someone else for a few years. Get the experience, get to know how the industry works, get to know some capital, get to save some money, etc. And then after a few years, you can, if you still want to start your own business, go ahead. But then I know a few students, they want to start their business straight away. They don't really understand how the industry works. They don't have the connections.
Yeah.
They don't have any financial backup.
Mm-mm.
So afterwards, you see them 6 months later, 9 months later, they complain, susah, susah, susah.
Oh.
I say, yeah, you did it the wrong way. But the weird thing is, even though I advise my students, I can say 90% of the time my students will not follow my advice,
Mm.
and then they will get themselves into trouble.
Yeah.
So it's okay. I mean, sometimes you have to experience yourself. But my observation is that actually starting your own business is the most difficult road.
Mm.
It's it's much more difficult than people think.
Yeah.
So I would say that should be your last option. Your first option is work for someone else. Like as an accounting student, just work for an accounting firms for a few years.
Yeah.
Even if you don't necessarily enjoy being an accountant because it's a very stressful life, at least you have that experience. You're
Yeah.
still young, and then after maybe 4 or 5 years, you decide what you want to do. Alhamdulillah.
Okay. So before we further asking more question to Dr. Ridwan Fontaine, the audience, if you guys have any question to ask, you can uh, give your question in the chat box in the comment section, and inshallah I will ask directly to the Dr. Ridwan. So the next question, this my own question. Would you suggest? Would you recommend or suggest IIUM student to become a lecturer in IIUM?
So it basically comes back down to, are you passionate or not?
Hmm.
So one issue is you have to be passionate about education, and then the other issue is you have to be passionate about research. So sometimes I think that students don't quite understand what is the job of a lecturer. If you compare the job of a lecturer compared to the job of a school teacher, the
Hmm.
job of the school teacher is basically you have the textbook, you teach the textbook.
Yeah.
The job of the lecturer is actually you do research and you write the textbook
Hmm.
and then you teach the textbook. So alhamdulillah, I've written a number of textbooks, and so I teach my own stuff. And those students who are in my class and it's not my textbook, normally I will criticize the textbook, which they don't like. But I also have to be honest to them. If I teach something and I don't agree with a chapter, I cannot pretend that, oh, I agree with it. I have to be honest. I say, okay, I don't like this chapter for A, B, C reason, but I still will, teach you this and make sure you do well in the final exam. But at least I want you to understand why I have problems with this chapter. Okay. So for example, virtually all the things that we talk about in management, the underlying assumption is profit is the most important thing,
Yeah.
which I completely disagree. If you come into my class, the first question I will ask you is 1 million ringgit that is halal the same as 1 million ringgit that is haram? Uh, as an accounting student, you will say it's the same. 1 million
Yeah.
here, 1 million here, but one is halal,
Theoretically,
one
it's
is
true.
haram.
Yeah.
So that's the value of being in UIA, is that you will be reminded, actually, yes, this is not the same.
Mm-mm. Yeah, like a very simple question, but it's a deep fundamental. If we see the money in a quantitative, simply is like the same value. But if
Hmm.
we look behind about the, I think accountability, integrity, we see the difference and what we, as as a Muslim, and we learn Islamic basic teaching in IIUM. I think we need to appreciate those things.
I will just very quickly. I know we are supposed to be kind of relaxed and so on, but just very quickly, because this
Okay.
is an issue that I think a lot of Muslims are concerned about. One of the most common question is, why are there so many problems in the Muslim world? Okay, well, I can say one of the main reason is there's so much money that is haram. And Allah will not give any barakah to any society where there's so much haram money that is floating around. So I think one of the challenges of our generation, so me as a lecturer and you guys as students, is we have to create this culture where we do not touch haram money. And we
Yeah.
teach our friend, or teach is maybe the wrong thing, but we encourage our friends also to stay away from this haram money. And then if there's enough people who do that, then you're going to have the barakah back into the society.
Yeah.
But it's really as simple as that. So okay, we can now go back to the more light stuff if you want.
It's okay. It's okay, Data. I think it's we have like what we call in Malay is like a selingan lah. We have
Yeah, yeah,
like
okay.
a very fun conversation, but
Okay.
we can have like
Okay.
something deep talk conversation.
Okay.
Okay. So go back to question about culture and so on.
Okay.
So the question, how well are you coming with Bahasa Melayu so far? Are you able to speak it or understand most of it?
Okay, so I was actually thinking about this the other day.
Mm.
Um, I learned to speak Malay by watching Chinese television
Mm.
in Malaysia.
Oh.
I know it's strange, right? So I was watching these Chinese movies, and then you had the Malay translation underneath. And so
Oh, I
because
see.
you have the picture, and then I would say, hey, to my wife, like, what does this word mean? And then she would explain. So
Oh.
I mean, I actually learned a lot by watching TV and just things like that. And then I was speaking very basic Malay to my kids,
Mm.
but it was always very basic, like, okay, time to go to sleep, or go and eat, and this and that, whatever. So I never really learned like formal Malay or
Oh.
complicated Malay. But I mean, daily conversation most of the time is okay. But when Malays talk amongst themselves, they often use a very shortened version of Malay that I don't understand. Like I always say, people say like korang, korang, korang. Say, what is korang? I don't understand what is korang. So sometimes when I listen to other people speak in Malay, I actually get lost. But if I want to communicate with someone in Malay, inshallah, I can do that. And then if there's a few words that I don't know, I just mix a bit of English, and then people kind of say, okay, we know what you're trying to say.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Doctor. So I think the next question is about the dressing code. How does the code of dressing in Malaysia align with your expectation? Yeah, like you just shared before, like we in Malaysia we have our traditional wear is baju Melayu and with some pinks. Okay,
Yeah.
how this align with your expectation?
So the thing in Malaysia is, I think it's actually quite practical. So, for example, as long as you are dressed properly, meaning that you cover your aurat, it's kind of common sense. Like at IIUM, it's like slacks, you have a proper shirt, but people don't expect you to wear a tie all the time. People don't expect you to wear a coat all the time. So it's kind of formal, but also quite relaxed. And I think that generally, as long as you are respectful of other people, then nobody will question you, right?
Yeah.
Now, again, sometimes the weird things is that I actually like to do a lot of sports. And
Yeah.
then when sometimes you go and you see people who are wearing very short shorts, and it's like, hey, why are you wearing shorts that are so small? Like, it's not difficult to have a little bit longer shorts, or a little bit more baggy clothes, or to cover your aura properly. So I think it's just kind of, people are easy, but also I think kind of there's also that implicit, you should be conscious of other people, and make sure that you kind of dress appropriately as well. So it's
Yeah.
kind of give and take, but overall I think it's not a big problem.
Yes. Okay. Basically, based on your answer about the culture in Malaysia, and also about learning Malay language, about the code of dressing, I think there are some differences, but like what you say, what I can say based on your sharing, I think it's not a very hard to adapt with a Malay culture. Okay. Yeah.
Well, okay, so I
Okay.
think the point is that I came to Malaysia wanting to adapt. Like if you look at expatriates in Malaysia, there are some expatriates, even though they're in Malaysia, they try to live as if they're in Europe. And
I
I
see.
think that's kind of a stupid way of thinking, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like if you're in Malaysia, be Malaysian. Like in a sense, I know some people. I have a friend. He lives in Bangsa. Everything in Bangsa is, the price is so ridiculous, and is
Yeah.
completely unnecessary. You can have such a good quality of life for a fraction of the price. Like I live in Bangi, it's fine, but your mindset has to be, I'm in Malaysia. I don't want to pretend that I'm not in Malaysia, kind of thing. And so sometimes I see some of my students I know who are Arabs. There's a very strong Arab community, and the
Yeah.
danger with that is you just stay within your community, and you're like trying to create an Arab world instead of living in Malaysia. So I think my advice is, if you're going to come to Malaysia, commit yourself to have the full experience of being in Malaysia. And that means you try to learn the language, not the basic, but as much as you can. You try to meet good people, and emphasis on the good people. So that
Yeah.
means you go to the surau, you go to the masjid, and you mix
Mhm.
around and so on and so forth. And inshallah, the rest will come easily.
Yeah, inshallah. I think the most important thing is whom we be friends, because they are reflected ourselves back. Yeah.
Correct.
So I think
Correct.
it's very important to choose a good friends, whether you are a local student or international student. Try to find a good friend that can remind you to do always do good things. Remind you about I think uh, to live the life to the fullest.
Mm,
Okay.
correct.
Okay. So next question. And this is the last question from the organizer. Maybe if we have more time, we can add some more question. What
Okay.
are three things you like about IIUM? And if you were to suggest three things which can be improved in IIUM, what would they be? So first,
Okay.
three things you like about IIUM and three things to improve.
Okay. Honestly speaking, the best thing I like about IUM are my students.
Mm.
So I have to justify that. So I've worked in private universities. I've worked in IIUM. So what I find with IIUM students is actually the standard is quite high. And generally, IIUM students are quite obedient. So like
Mm.
if I say, okay, let's do this, okay, we all do it. And generally there's a lot of cooperation. And so I think it's very rare that I've had a bad experience with IIUM student. As far as I remember, in the 12 years of teaching here, I've only had one student that gave me a problem. And this is like a very like complete outlier, a very weird guy. Um, so that's the first thing. Second thing, I think my colleagues, uh, most of my colleagues are very, very nice, very friendly, very cooperative. You got a problem, they'll help you out. Same thing with the admin staff. Um, the third thing, I would say, more in terms of room for improvement. Obviously, the facilities are not as good as they could be. And I think that's just because IUM is quite an old university. So to rebuild the buildings and fix this and fix that is actually quite expensive. But then there are also certain things that I question. And so, for example, sports facilities are sometimes closed when they should be opened.
Mm.
And when you talk to people, why is this closed? They'll give you all kinds of answers, which actually for me,
Yeah.
the answers doesn't make any sense.
Mm.
So I kind of wish there was a little bit more flexibility in terms of some of the facilities. But okay, it's nothing is perfect. So, but overall, yes, I'm very happy. Um, I'm not sure if I've answered all of the three things to be improved in IUM.
Yeah.
The other thing to be improved in IUM is I think the Wi-Fi.
No.
I think everybody
Absolutely.
I think everybody can agree with that.
Yes.
Um,
It's become more a big issue when we are in
yeah,
live class, online class, right?
yeah, but
Yeah.
even before the online learning, it's always been an issue. And I think one of the things also, okay, now if you last thing about things for improvement. I don't know whether you know this or not, but
Okay.
I actually every semester I get my students to do a project to create an awareness about the problem of internet pornography.
Hmm.
And I don't know whether this is true or not, but one of the things that I've heard is that ICT slows down Wi-Fi on purpose to make it more difficult for students to access internet porn. Uh, Again, I don't know whether it's true or not, but that internet pornography is probably one of those very taboo subjects that nobody wants to talk about, which should actually be talked about. And I don't think that students who watch internet porn fully understand the consequences of their actions. And the purpose of the awareness campaign that I'm doing through my students is actually to say there are very simple solutions, which is an NGO called Malaysians Against Pornography. So anybody who wants to know more, go to Facebook, type in Malaysians Against Pornography, and then you actually find a lot of information about this problem there. Okay, that's my public announcement. That's what
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Yeah. Okay, Doctor. So I think if there is any, I think I would like to go for the game session. It's
Okay,
the trademark for this Friends Beyond Border. But for the
okay.
audience, if you have any question, you can put in the comment section. And after the game session, we will move to the Q&A session. Okay.
Oh, there's actually quite a serious question on the comment section.
Yeah.
Zarif,
Zarif
what
Akil
advice do
Hasil.
you yeah what advice do you have for people who wish to convert but don't get permission from their parents?
Mm.
So this is actually quite an interesting question. It basically depends on a number of factors. One is the age factor. So if you are below 18, there's an issue. If you're above
Yeah.
18, you're obviously more independent. And then I would say don't make a decision by yourself, but ask someone who has got experience. So in Malaysia, there are a number of convert associations. I
Yes.
guess one of the most famous one is PERKIM, and ask them what's the best way to handle the situation, and then they will give you very practical advice, and it will depend what's your family background, which race, which country, etc., and then they will help you find out what's the best way to deal with that situation. But it's something you have to think about very, very carefully. So the more advice you get from people who've got the right experience, the better it is.
Okay.
Okay, so we can go for the game.
Okay, Doctor. So this guessing game, maybe I will give Malay words and you need to translate in
Okay,
English. This is trademark for this Friends Beyond Border series.
okay,
But I don't know the level of your vocabulary in Malay because you have your wife a Malaysian also. So I think we start with very. I hope it's simple. Okay, the words in Malay is kejayaan. What is in English?
okay. Kejayaan is success.
Yeah, success. Okay. The audience, if you have any suggestion of words, you can give in the comment section. Okay, this one maybe quite difficult. Cakrawala.
No, that's not a word that I normally hear. So I have no idea what that means.
Chakra. Okay, the Cakrawala is a celestial.
A what?
Celestial. Yep. Yeah.
Okay,
Celestial. Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. The one in the conversation. CD. Do you know what CD? CD. I think CD is in English, right?
CD is an English word, yes.
CD is in English, right? Okay. The next words I give in Malay, kerenting. Kerenting.
Kerinting, I've heard of this word before. Isn't it something like dry?
No, it's on
No,
our body.
that's kering.
That's kering. That's kering. Yeah,
Okay,
kering is
kerinting,
dry.
I don't know.
Kerenting is curly hair, like a curly hair.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
After we
in the
finish this, then
conversation.
I will tell you. I will tell you the word that gives me the most problem.
Okay, betul. So from Zarif Akila, kegemilangan.
Okay, so anything with gemilang is obviously to do with how would you translate kegimilan? It would be more like I would say also similar to success. I
Yeah.
know it's not exactly the same, but it's like that aura of berjaya,
Yes, yeah.
kejayaan,
Yeah,
gemilan.
I think it's
Yeah.
acceptable. Okay, and then this one is supposed to be simple, but people normally not pronounce the long words. Okay.
Okay.
The Malay word is istirahat.
Oh yeah, that's a place to rest, a
Yeah,
resting place.
istirahat.
Yeah,
Resting place.
because
Like
that's
the
from the
relaxing.
Arabic, right? So why are you giving
Oh
me
yeah.
Arabic words?
Oh, I know where my
I learned that word when I was studying Arabic.
yeah. Okay, I think that's already okay. I think the puzzle
Okay,
piece
okay.
want to give
I
the
have
initiate.
something to share with you. So
All right.
one of the words that I see a lot, which drives me crazy, is 𝒓𝒊𝒏𝒅𝒔
Oh, walau bagaimanapun.
First of all, I don't know how to pronounce it properly, and then I never really know what it means, and I've always been too lazy to find out what it means in the dictionary. Um, but normally, I would say for a foreigner, the um, the most difficult thing to learn are those words which are associated with counting things like dua orang, tiga biji rumah.
Yeah.
I forgot the name of those kind of words.
Oh, yeah. I also don't remember. Yeah.
Okay, but anyway, all
Like
those.
like sebilah pisau, something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So those kind
Apa?
of counting words,
Yeah, the
because
count.
there's so many of them, and afterwards, after a while, you don't know what's the right way, the right one to give, and then you get confused, and then so anyway, that's one of the things about Malay that I always kind of get lost.
Yeah. I think a simple Malay is not quite difficult, but more like sastra. Okay. A deep learning in Malay. Even normal
Okay,
people in Malaysia even
I have a
cannot.
question for you.
Really.
I have a question for
Okay.
you. What is the difference between kita and kamu?
Kita and kamu.
Yeah.
Kita I think it's kita to referring to we as a group. Kita.
Okay.
Me and my friends. So
Okay.
kita like kita mahu pergi. We want to go.
Okay.
So kamu is for you. You. Kamu, your direct translate is you.
So you're not part of that group.
And I'm not from that group.
Okay. So
Kamu.
that's what I thought as well. But then I was talking to some other people. I say, no, your understanding is wrong.
Okay.
So they said kita is if you are for a small group, and then kamu is for a big group. So
Oh.
sometimes I also kind of get confused because you meet different people, they tell you different things, and then you don't know what is the right answer, the wrong answer. So sometimes that becomes confusing.
Yeah. I think in the conversation someone interact the penjodoh bilangan.
Ah, yeah, penjodoh
Yeah,
bilang. Yeah,
penjodoh
yeah, yeah,
bilangan.
yeah.
Okay, and then kami, us versus ours. Yeah, I think us is I
I
think
think kita is us,
yeah,
and
kita is
then
us. Our
okay, never mind. I will ask my wife afterwards. She'll probably tell me that I'm completely wrong anyway. But okay, so one thing just to share because this is Friends Beyond Borders. Um, one of the things actually is I have too many languages in my brain. So I have English, French, Malay, a little bit of Arabic, and then they get confused. So, for example, in French, petit means small.
Petite,
So
small.
if I see the word
Yeah.
petit surah, right, I think of a small chapter of the Quran, not a letterbox. So
Yeah.
there are so many like small things like that that just
Oh.
I have to think, oh, what language am I thinking in, and then I kind of have to adjust.
Yeah.
But yeah, so sometimes that happens also.
Petite, small. Okay.
Sometimes even in class, I can think of the Malay word, but I don't know the English word. So
Oh.
I have to say, what? How do you say this word in English? And then all my students look at me as if and I'm not making a joke. It's just I just forgot what is the English word.
Yeah.
So that sometimes can happen when you live in Malaysia for a long time.
Yeah. Okay, maybe for our concluding remarks, maybe we can have the last word from you. Maybe any advice or things you want every one of us, an advice from our lecturers to us, a teenager. We want to experience new thing. We were maybe as a students. What your advice for us that can somehow bring something beneficial to our life?
I think I mean, obviously, there's a lot of things that I can say, and it would, very much depend on the person that I'm talking to, and so on and so forth. But generally, um, I think that most students that I know are okay, meaning that they understand that they have their responsibilities and they're trying to find the right balance. One thing that I have discovered a little bit of the last few weeks by discussing this with my students is a lot of students seem to be under a lot of pressure, especially when it comes to their body image. So I know this is kind of a sensitive topic, but a lot of students seem to think that they are overweight. And I think it's simply because they're obsessed with the pictures that they see on social media, on Instagram and whatnot. So I just kind of, I wish that people would not be so influenced by social media, because I think everybody should realize that almost everything that you see on social media is fake. It's not reality. It's a Photoshop version of reality. But unfortunately, it creates a lot of unnecessary stress for a lot of students, because like, oh, I'm not skinny enough, I'm not pretty enough, you're fine.
Yeah.
Just enjoy life. You have been created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a certain way. Appreciate that, and don't worry about other people perception of you,
Perception.
because it's, as I said, social media is, most of it is fake anyway. So that would be kind of my words of wisdom, if you want to say.
Yeah.
Wallahu
Okay.
alam.
Oh, thank you very much, Roster. I think for the advice, we need to be so influenced with the social media, but to see the reality in this world.
Correct.
Okay, and then I think maybe less time with social media with your phone and less time with real people. I think that's could very helpful. So thank you very much, Dr. Ridwan Fontaine, for having us tonight.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's very precious time we have tonight, and I learned a lot about the culture, about you survive. I think you survive to it to come to Malaysia to learn everything, and your effort to learn Malay. And the one that I'm very like, even a Malaysian need to take note on this, that we try to be like a Malay people.
Mm.
Not I'm asking all people to accept to be a Malay, but we try to be proud as a Malaysian. Yeah,
Hmm.
to be our country, and also the important note for me and others, I think if we come to other country, other places, like me, I come from Johor. Maybe if I come to Kelantan, I'm also need to respect the culture there. Yeah, I come to when we go to other certain places, we need try to adapt and try to see the differences and embrace the differences there. So
Yep.
Alhamdulillah, I think we have arrived at the end for this session, and I think this session is very important for us as I am student. We need to mingle around with all of our friends. We need to less the gap between us, and also it mentioned in the Quran also for us to know one another. And based on our differences, there is something that we need to embrace. So
Yep.
inshallah, Alhamdulillah, we end of our session. Thank you for all who come to this session, and I would remind all of you for the attendance. Okay, so like you see in the chat box, there is uh, a link for the attendance for all of you to get the star point, and also you can scan the QR code in the screen for the attendance. Okay. Okay. So I think that's all. Thank you very much, Dr. 𝗔𝒊𝒆𝒏𝒅.
Okay, you're welcome.
I think even I'm not one of your students, I think for this night session, I learned a lot about you. I think more closer to you. So
Thank
inshallah,
you very
if
much.
we have an experience, we have an opportunity to come face to face, inshallah in the kuliah.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Okay, thank you, Doctor. So we
Okay.
end this session with Tasbih Kafarah and Suratul Asr. Astaghfirullah, la ilaha illa anta astaghfirullah. Okay, thank you everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.